Good day, everybody. My name is Mo Jogi. Welcome to this webinar on PaintShop Pro 2020. We're quite excited to share with you the latest release. Just some housekeeping. I'd like to quickly do a sound check. So if you could confirm with me by way of the webinar toolbox, if you could just kind of put up your hand and I would then have an indication that you can hear me okay. So a quick sound check. Is everybody able to hear me okay? Thank you, Jürgen. I think we are good on sound. My next question to you is, are you able to see the screen? Thanks, Elizabeth, Don, Divakar, Cheryl, thank you for that. Are you guys able to see the screen okay? Could you just confirm that by a little wave of your hand, please? Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks. Okay, so I'm going to get started. Basically, we usually have these workshops courtesy of Jo Levins, who's the channel marketing director for Corel. She is unfortunately busy with another event, and she asked me to kindly continue without her. If she does have an opportunity, I have no doubt she will jump into the meeting room. But thank you so much for your time. I'm going to basically be taking you through some of the new features inside of Corel PaintShop Pro 2020, which was released very recently. Of course, if you have any questions, we'll try and get through as many of those as we possibly can, and you can do that by way of the chat pod. I'd like you to note that all attendees are on mute mode, just to kind of not create too much chaos in terms of the presentation. So feel free to type through any questions that you might have in the chat pod, please, and I'll try and get through as many of them. Any comments and questions would be welcome. So let me just see very quickly. So Don, are you not seeing the webinar? You should be seeing a PaintShop Pro 2020 welcome screen. Could you confirm that that is the case? Thank you for the question. Okay, let me try. Thank you for that, Don. Let me try and re-enable the screen share. So what I'll go ahead and do is just enable screen share once again, and we should be good to go. Yes. Okay, so I am kind of checking this on another computer as a delegate, and I think we are ready to go. So without further ado, Don, can you confirm if you can see everything okay? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the webinar. So for the first thing we're going to be talking about in this presentation, of course, is what's new in this current version. I'm still not seeing it. Could I get confirmation? Is the problem just with Don? Apologies there, Don. Let's try and get that sorted out for you very quickly. So you're able to hear me okay clearly? I am currently on the what's new screen. Can I get a confirmation that that is okay for everybody? I'm just trying to determine if the problem is unique to Don or if the problem is more widespread. So if I could have somebody just confirm whether the problem is with Don or whether you can see my screen rather. So I'll just have a look at by way of your hands. Can I assume that everything's okay? By way of a show of hands, please. Okay, so Angela, thank you. Devaka, thank you. Don, yeah, Elizabeth. So I assume that everybody can see, with the exception of Don. Don, what I am going to suggest to you, sir, is that maybe what you'd want to do is simply quit out of GoToMeeting and jump right back in again. And just let's see if we can force the GoToWebinar plugin to reactivate on your side. If you could do that for me, please. In the meantime, what I'll do is I will simply talk through some of the new features. But before we go ahead, could I get a confirmation in the question pod that you are able to see everything okay, please? Anybody? If you could type in the question pod if everything is okay, I will then continue to move on. Don is just alerted to me to a problem. Okay, so Stanley, thank you. Ed, thank you very much. Keith, much appreciated. Jess, thank you. And of course, what we'll now go ahead and do is try and resolve Don's problem. So Don, I'm going to suggest that you just maybe dial in again, because we are seeing that we are getting confirmation from everybody else. Okay, Don, we're gonna look out for you. So please just sign in again, please. And with that, what we're going to go ahead and do is we are going to continue. I'd like to remind Don and everybody else that this session is being recorded. So if you do miss anything, you can always go through to the Corel Discovery Center to work through the tutorial at your own pace. So these are some of the features we're going to be covering today. Of course, I do not want to make this a boring kind of PowerPoint type presentation, death by PowerPoint. We'd like to see the actual technology in action. So we're going to be doing a lot of that. You know, just kind of talk through from a design perspective, some of the value that you might be able to get from the tool set. So the very first tool set that I'd like to discuss with you is the clone subset. I'm going to hop over to Corel PaintShop Pro here, and we're going to basically talk through some of the tools. Now, one of the things that I quite enjoy in PaintShop Pro is the different possibilities with regards to the actual arrangement of the panels, what we call workspaces, of course. I'll go ahead and choose the Get Started panel over here, and you'll see that we've got essentially 3 of them. By default, PaintShop Pro tends to, at least they're shipping it now with the Essentials panel enabled. And just to share with you what that does is the Essentials panel just basically gives you some of the core tool sets. I prefer working with Complete. I recommend that you maybe consider working with Complete too, and that's a really good tool set. Oh, lovely, Don, I'm glad that you're back. Okay, so what I'm going to go ahead and do then is I'm going to hit the Complete tool set or workspace. We're going to be talking to photography. For those of you that are new, that are familiar with PaintShop Pro, as you know, that's a new workspace which we'll talk to in a minute. So with a complete tool set up, I can then go over to Manage. Manage is really fun because it allows us to get through to imagery really, really quickly. And what I'm going to go ahead and do for starters is I'm going to go ahead and start working through the clone possibilities. Basically right-click on this image and choose Edit Photo. And I'm working on a drawing tablet here, which just makes life a little bit easier, I suspect. So let me shunt things out of the way a little bit, and we're just going to wait for the image to open. There's going to be a bit of a lag by way of the webinar, so I'll just kind of keep an eye on the second monitor as things load. Very good. Okay, so what we have here is we've got a textured environment at the bottom. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to, again, remove the umbrella set in the middle and keep the ones on the right-hand side. Now, the images that I'm using all come from the Corel library wherever possible. And I will point you to links where you're able to go and try this by yourself. Now, one of the things that I appreciate when working is what I call a destructive edit. And what a destructive edit is, ladies and gentlemen, is an edit that changes the pixels the pixel information permanently, even if it is for the better. So I'm always trying to work in a way that allows me to go back to the original if there's a need to. And of course, the easiest way is to simply go ahead and duplicate layers of the layers panel or dock on the right-hand side. What I'm going to be doing here is I'm wanting to create an empty raster layer. So you can see it's just a straightforward raster layer. And I'll go ahead and call this raster layer clone. What that's going to allow us to do is be able to work in a non-destructive way using the clone tool. So I'm quite sure that a lot of you are very familiar with the clone tool. Here I'm going to go ahead and just share with you some of the possibilities. So you'll see for starters up at the top, my brush size is a little small. It's sitting at 94 pixels. So I'm just going to basically crank that up to around about 250-ish, 225 in this case. I'm making sure that my density is set at full intensity, and so is my opacity. I'm using align mode, and very importantly, I'd like to use all layers, and I want to make use of something called Smart Edge, which would give me a better edge result. With that said, what I'm then going to go ahead and do is what I particularly like in this tool set is the right-click option, right? So right-click to make our mask selection, and you'll see that I'm getting an overlay, this kind of ghosted image, and that's happening by way of this show overlay switch on your main toolbar at the top of your screen. You're able to enable and disable that at will, of course. And then what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm just going to go ahead and paint this away. Now, what I'm doing is I'm painting from right to left. So let's go ahead and remove this element here. And what I'll then do is I'm going to go ahead and zoom in a little bit because I'm seeing a little bit of artifacting happening there. So you can see I've got 3 of the same points there. Let's get rid of that while we're at it. And of course, what I would recommend when you're working with image editors is you wouldn't need to go more than 100%. Anything above 100%, we tend to start to fiddle. So you can see that that's looking fairly okay. Now, what I'd like to do, let's get rid of that as well. And in that process, you can see I've kind of damaged these tracks that kind of are running through the beach, and I'd like to just bring those back. So again, what I'm going to go ahead and do here, you guys, is I'm going to go ahead and drop my size of my brush, say about 75. I'll go ahead and do a right click right about there, and you can see I've got my overlay, and of course my overlay then allows me to go ahead and align nice and straight. And you can see I'm getting a bit of artifact. So let's go ahead and do another selection. I didn't quite enjoy that one. So I'm just going to go Control Z. And again, once again, right click and line up, and off we go. Much better. And we can do the same for that as well. So let's go ahead and right click over there. Oops, that went a little skew. And off we go again. So again, really, really simple and straightforward. Now, the value proposition here, let me just try and do this better. The value proposition here is, of course, that because we're working on a layer, the information is completely non-destructive, right? And I'm going to share with you how that's going to come together in a minute. That's better. There we go. Okay. So if I go ahead and zoom out now, there's a couple of things I would like to do to this image. It's not quite as saturated as I would like. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to introduce an adjustment layer right here. So we'll go ahead and choose adjustment layer and sorry, I just got a question. Do the pictures need to be raster or vector? That's a question from Carl. Carl, great question. The images would need to be raster to be able to, so generally images are raster. But you know, your text elements and your other vector elements can remain vector. But for this type of work, your images would need to be raster. Great question. Thank you for that. I'm going to head over to hue, saturation, and lightness over here. These are non-destructive filters. I've clicked on this little yin and yang looking icon. And what that's going to allow us to do is it's going to allow us to just jump up the saturation a little bit. I'm going to do it quite drastically, so we've got kind of more azure ocean. So you can see that happening pretty okay. The cool thing with adjustment layers is they apply downward, and of course we can create layer masks to protect areas that we don't want to work with. You can see those umbrellas popped out quite nicely as well. There's one last adjustment layer I'd like to apply, and this is one of my favorites, and that's an S-curve. Again, I'm just going to go ahead to an area that makes more sense, like maybe there, where I have a high level of contrast between the different images. So I'm just going to push up the highlights a little bit, crank back the shadows a little bit, and we get this really strong bolt of color now. So that's pretty much it. We're ready to roll. Okay, awesome. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to close that out and say no to that. And you can see I've got my organizer at the bottom. And the way you would get that palette up is to go ahead and choose it from the palettes menu, keyboard shortcut, of course, Shift-9. What we can do as well, and these images are available to you guys on the Corel Discovery Center, so feel free to go ahead and download and try it yourselves. We're going to go ahead and we're going to now clone across images. So here we've got a piece of artwork, and what we would like to do is, again, clip art library from Corel. We would like to go ahead and, clone into this particular image. Now we can do this in one of two ways. The first possibility, of course, is, we could just go ahead and right click and clone. Second possibility is we can create a clone stamp, which I'll share with you in a minute. Right, so let's do the straightforward clone between two images first, okay? So I'm going to go over to Abstract Art once again. And in Abstract Art, what I'm then going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and pick up my clone tool, which I have. The brush is a little small, so I'll go ahead and jump up the size. Let's say 250-ish again. Right click sort of more or less in the center. And then I'm going to head over to our blank painting. So I'd like the clone to fall in this space over here. So there's a couple of things I'd like to do before that. And one of those is I would just like to protect the rest of the image. So I'm just going to go ahead and pick up Smart Selection over here. Make sure that I'm sitting on Add. And then by way of a click and drag, just go ahead and select out that pad. You can see we've got it selected. And I'm going to do a rough selection for now, but there's a couple of tweaks I'd like to make to my selection. So I'm going to go ahead and choose Selections and Edit Selection. So you can see over here, our selection is running through the actual punch holes. I'm just going to give that a minute for it to catch up. There we go. So you can see that the edit is running through the punch holes over there. And what I'm going to basically go ahead and do is eliminate some of those elements, right? So I've picked up the brush tool here, and I'm just using the brush tool to kind of erase those bits and bobs that we don't want to be affected by our clone when we do bring that in. So again, you can see I'm not paying a lot of attention to this just for speed. Of course, I would give this a little bit more attention, if it was a full-blown production. But just to give you a sense of how this comes together, okay? I'm going back to selections. I'm choosing Edit Selection again. So that's a great way of getting a sense of where the selection mask is falling. Let's go ahead and choose our clone again. And you can see what's happening here now. I'm going to do this as a brush stroke. It didn't pick that up. So let me just go back here. And that's because I changed tools. So do remember that if you do this, you want to make sure that you do this in succession. So you choose the clone tool, do the right click to do the source. So there we are in the original image. Head over again to where we're going to be painting to, and then just go ahead and I'll just do this as a brush stroke like so. So you'll see that artwork now is coming through onto our new canvas. There you have it. So really, really straightforward and easy. And again, in this case, what wouldn't be possible is to work on an empty layer. So what you would need to do is to duplicate the layer, right? Just to protect yourself should you need to go back. Okay, good. So I'm going to go ahead and close those out. Let's close out both those files. And now let's go ahead and look at a clone, which needs a little bit more finesse. So I'll go ahead and open this image over here. And it's a beautiful shot that will really work well in black and white, I think. So let's go ahead and do a black and white in a moment. But before we do that, I'd like to remove these two light-looking things. So we're going to go ahead and remove these elements from the image. And you can see we've got a few splotches that we'd like to get rid of as well. So again, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and drop the brush size. For purposes of the webinar, I'm just going to keep this, let's zoom in a little bit actually. I'm going to try and keep this as full screen as possible so you get a good sense of the overall vibe, right? So there we go, you get a good sense of how that's coming together. I'm just waiting for the webinar engine to catch up with us. I'm going to go ahead and right click in terms of my source. I'm working with a fairly big brush here. And then I'm just going to go ahead and paint over that. Let's try a little higher, in fact. Right click and then just go ahead and paint over that. There we go. Let's see what we have here. That's better. Okay, and then again, what I'll do is I'll do a right click on this side, let's say around about there, and we'll go ahead and paint over this. Now, you'll see that I have gone over the seam line between the two strips of wood, and the way we fix something like that is we're going to use the smart clone, which I'll share with you in a minute. Again, my brush seems to be too big for this size, so I'll just go ahead and drop that down in size a little bit. 84 sounds great. Let's do a right click over here. And then, of course, what I'll go ahead and do is just paint this in very quickly. So again, you will experience a little bit of lag in terms of the playback. One more time, let's do a right click and get rid of this. So the reason that the more times you right click, of course, the better the seam or the fill is going to be, because we're then sourcing from different spaces, right? Okay. So now let's deal with the challenge of these. That's not too good. Let me just do this guy proper. Sorry, I'm fiddling now, and I do apologize, but you know, you want to make it look proper, don't you? Okay, so we're clearly not happy with that little bit. Those lines are just bad, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to make use of the Smart Clone tool, and you'll see that we've got 3 options at the top here, ladies and gentlemen, that I would like you to explore when you do try this yourself back at your computer. We're going to go for a rectangular one in this case, and all I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and drag out and make it fairly wide, say something like that. And now what I can go ahead and do is just kind of go ahead and line that proper, and then just go ahead and get rid of the bits that I don't want. Let's do the same on this side. And you can see we've kind of gotten rid. Again, I would spend a little bit more time, but we've kind of brought back the lines. So how would we deal with a situation like this? Let me go ahead and zoom in over here. And I'm going to go for the freehand selection this time. And I'm just going to basically create a selection roughly the size of the splotch I'd like to get rid of. So let's start with a larger one. And then you can see that as we go over the splotch, I can go ahead and move this to wherever I want, right? And that's basically how that is done, right? So let's just have a look. I'm just going to try another one. It doesn't seem to be behaving too well. So let me just try another one here quickly. I'll hit the escape key. That's how you get rid of your current selection. Let's try that again. And let's see. Oh, we've got a blend mode. Let's change that to original. That's probably why. And there we have it. Okay. So it's basically a selection. And then you're going to go basically choose blend mode and get rid of that. Okay. So there's a little bit of lag again on the computer screen, but that's essentially how that works. Right. So the next thing I'd like to share with you is I'm going to go through to the adjust menu here. And what I'd like to do is, of course, as you know, we have the ability to choose grayscale. It just knocks it straight through to a grayscale. And of course, what we can do is I'm going to go ahead and undo that for a minute, because what I'd like to do is share with you another methodology, and that is by way of adjust. So I'm going to go ahead. There's a number of ways. You can use adjust, you can use saturation, you can use the color option. I'm going to go to effects and choose photo effects in black and white film. And what this does is it gives us a much higher density in terms of how we can control the black and white. So you can see that her dress is really popped. We've maintained skin tones really nicely. You can hit the suggest color. It will go ahead and suggest a color for you. which is pushing towards the reds, which is the start of the spectrum. Or you can choose to do this yourself. So you can say, listen, I'd like you to push more further towards the blue. So you can see we're bringing in more of the wood. We're creating higher contrast. I quite like that. I'm going to hit the OK button on that. And what we're going to then do is I'm going to close this document off with one final effect. And that's going to be under the image menu. I'm going to choose picture frame. And of course, there's many different types of picture frames you can choose to work with. You can load additional picture frames up at the top here. I'm going to go ahead and choose the black tone picture frame. It looks really, really nice. And then I'll go ahead and choose, you can choose whether you want to mirror it and all of those good things. We'll go ahead and hit the OK button on that. That's pretty much good to go, right? So let me just go ahead and zoom out to that so you get a sense of the overall image. And that's pretty good to go. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and close this out, and I'm going to say no to that. We're going to look at another type of clone, again, in a different image. I'm going to choose edit photo on this image right here. And you can see we've got this beautiful shot, and what we'd like to do is remove the dog and his ball. Again, the thing is there's no cruelty to animals here. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try the smart clone again. We can obviously use object remover as well, but just to share with you, object remover is not necessarily a new feature. This allows us to just go in and target the elements we don't want, and that's working a lot better than it did in the last image, isn't it? Hit the escape key, and you can see there we're kind of good to go. All right, awesome. So we're going to say no to that. Not to worry, the dog is safe. So what we can do with the smart clone then, of course, is we can take it, we can up level it by saving particular types of selections. So here's a beautiful moon setting. This is from pexels.com. They allow for royalty-free images, so definitely do check them out. And then, of course, we have this image here. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to kind of create like a, almost like a Titan type, the moon Titan from Saturn's moon Titans, almost like that kind of vibe. So you've got ammonia lakes and you've got multiple moons in the sky and that type of thing. Okay, so we're just creating a bit of a surreal environment here. Now, of course, what I'd like to do for starters is I'd like to go ahead and up level the curve. So I just want to create a more dramatic scene here. And I'm going to do what I call a pixel hammock. So I'm going to pull these colors down. And by doing that, we're going to exaggerate the overall sense of the sunset. Okay, let's push it down a little further. I don't want to make it as dramatic as possible. So there we've got this kind of beautiful sunset going, and that's looking way more like a methane lake. I'm just going to wait for the webinar software to catch up with us so you can get a sense of how this works. Now, what we can do with this then is we can go over to this image with the moon, and I would like to use the moon as a basis for a brush preset, a smart clone brush preset. So what I'm going to go ahead and do here is I'm still on free transform or free selection mode. Sorry for that. Let me go ahead and choose the circular selection mode, and you can see there is the circular selection. That's a terrible circular selection, so let me try that again. Yeah, that's pretty okay, I guess. Yeah, that's going to make for a beautiful copy. So what I would then do is head over to the presets option right here, and I'm going to tell the computer I'd like a new preset, and I'll just call this Moon 2. So you can see I've created one already, but just for your benefit, I'm showing you how this is done as well, right? So we're going to hit the OK button on that, head back to our Smart Clone option. We're still in the Smart Clone tool, you'll remember, but you'll see that it's giving us this dragon image because that's the brush that it's currently set at. I'll go ahead and choose Moon 2, hit the OK button, and I'm now on the curve, so I'm going to jump back to the background, and you can see now what I can go ahead and do is, for example, I can adjust the size. So I can say, listen, I want a really large moon, for example, right? And let's drop one in there. That looks fantastic. It's doing a blend directly in. You can choose to bring in just the texture as well. And of course, you can build on top of your kind of copy. So I want to do two of the same. Let me get rid of that one just to give you a sense of how this comes together. And I will go ahead and make a really small one now. And you can see we've got a smaller type of moon. Okay, again, the adjustment layer is still available to us, and that's kind of exaggerating the look and feel in terms of that moon setting. Okay, so that's, of course, a smart clone brush preset. Now, how can this offer us value in a production environment? So here what we have is I've got a t-shirt mock-up. Again, all of this artwork comes from the Corel Draw Clip Art library, so you do have access to them. And what we'd like to do is we'd like to take this dragon tattoo style image and place it onto this gentleman's t-shirt, and would like it to look convincing, of course. So what I'm going to go ahead and do here is, again, you're going to use the smart clone tool. You're going to go ahead and make a selection like this. Okay, once you've got that, you can see it instantly creates it as a brush. You would then go ahead and save that as a preset. I've already done that for purposes of efficacy here. So I'm going to simply move on. Let me just have a look. Carl, my connection, so can I get a replay of this? Most definitely, Carl. This is being recorded, so I would guess in the next week or two there would be a recording available. I'm sorry that you're having problems, but I'm hoping you're getting the gist of the presentation. So what I'm going to go ahead and do here, you guys, is again, just to keep the original intact, I'll duplicate this layer because it has to be on the layer itself so that you can do the blend properly. I'll set this to original. I'll go ahead and choose our dragon brush set, hit the OK button on that, and you'll see it's really, really small because it's remembering the last setting. Let's go for 120. I'm simply guessing the number here. I'm assuming that's going to be okay. It's a little small. Let's try 150. Yeah, that's a whole lot better. And bada bing, bada boom. So you can see there's a bit of artifacting there. So I'm going to undo that. And what I'll do is I'll choose blend mode. And you'll see that with blend mode, I'm not getting any of the artifacting because what's happening now is it's taking the t-shirt into account as well. So let me just move to another tool so you can see this clearly. And you can see that there's a play with the texture in the t-shirt as well. So pretty dynamic. So there's your original image, and there's the image with a smart clone brush applied. Okay, great tool. I'm sure you're going to have lots of fun in terms of building out tools for your customers. Right. So I made mention, you guys, of the photography workspace, and I'd like to take you through that right now. So in terms of the photography workspace, you guys, this works especially well with tablets, so or tablet enabled devices. So as you know, Windows has this tablet mode. I'm just going to share with you very quickly what that looks like. So if you have, for example, I'm running a, there we go. You can see we've got a tablet mode in the top left corner here. Let's go ahead and collapse that once again and get out of that. So again, you can enable tablet mode to get best value with this if you're using something like a Lenovo Yoga, or in my case, a Wacom Mobile Studio, or if you're using a Microsoft Surface Pro or one of those types of devices. Excuse me. So let's go ahead and have a look at what was the thinking when Corel actually built this photography workspace for us. The first thing you will notice is that there's a change in the interface, as you would expect. And of course, what is particularly interesting is that you can see it's touch friendly, as I said to you earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and open an image here, and I'll just zip through our image list because I have shunted things around a little bit, and I'll hit the open button. So what you'll notice, of course, is we have, there we go, we've got a touch. I leave this enabled. I'm just going to wait for the webinar engine to catch up with it. There's a bit of lag, of course, as you would expect. So I'm going to leave this dialog box open for a second so you can see that the photography workspace is touch friendly. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the OK button on that. And we'll just wait for the dialog box to be on its way. I usually would say don't show again. So the first thing that's of value to us, you guys, is on the off the bottom. So you'll see the icons are pretty large and straightforward. The idea is you've got one-click hits that make life very easy to work through, and so on. So what you'll see here, for example, is there's a whole stack of tools, for example, for zooming in and out. Even if you've never used this before, it's very, very self-explanatory. So you should be able to get going right away. There you've got your flips over here, or horizontal and vertical flips. If you need to rotate, you can do that over here. And then off the bottom, you've got your main toolbar set. So completely different interface. The idea is that you might be sitting on a tablet type device and you want to crank through a whole lot of work really, really quickly. Okay. So of course, the first thing we can go ahead and do is Photo Paint has got this really powerful one-step photo fix. I click on that. I'm just going to give the web engine a moment to kind of catch up with us. You should see quite a dramatic change in the image. Again, you have the ability, there you go. You have the ability to, so I'm quite sure you'd agree that that's massive kind of improvement in terms of contrast. And let's not undo it so you can get a sense of it again. And you'll see that it's almost like it's peeling back a mask and kind of cleaning up the image for us. So I do quite like the one-step photo fix. Just to share that with you once again. So while that is my preferred choice, what I'm going to go ahead and do, is I'm going to undo it so we can kind of look at the raw photo and look at some of the other possibilities that we have available to us. We have a brightness and contrast possibility or slider. And again, what I can do is I can do this manually. So as opposed to using a one-step photo fix, I can go ahead and say, look, I want high levels of brightness and I would like to punch up the contrast. Again, just giving the computer a moment for it to catch up with us. You should see that coming through beautiful. So we got nice play in terms of our contrast between the highlights and shadows. And of course, you can go ahead and choose all of these possibilities too. So I can go ahead and tell the computer I want to use a preset, in this case, high contrast. And that, of course, doesn't work for me. I'm again going to allow it to just kind of trickle through to the webinar so you can see this. So I'm going to hit the cancel button here. The next thing we have is we have the ability to go ahead and choose a white balance. In this case, the white balance is pretty on, but I can go ahead and manually warm this image up. In this case, which is something I would like to do. So I'm going to just manually warm it up. So I'm going to bring in more yellows. It's moving closer to the kind of 11,000 Kelvin kind of spectrum. And if you would like, you can go ahead, if you're a geek like me, you can go ahead and hit the advanced options, and you just get a truckload of additional options that are available to you. So for example, what I could do here is I could tell the computer I want to just warm this up. So it's sitting about 5,000 Kelvin here. Let's go towards 6,500 Kelvin. So I'm getting a much warmer, kind of more sunsetty look. Again, I'm just going to allow the webinar engine to catch up with us. So there is a bit of lag. And yeah, you can kind of see that that's coming through fairly nicely. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of that again, just so that we route back to the original image so we can continue our conversation. Of course, you have hue, saturation, and lightness, so this works no differently to use HSV, HSB. This is something that you're probably familiar with. Again, what I'm going to go ahead and do here is, let's say, we would like more saturated. Let's try an ultraviolet glow. I'm not sure where this is going to go. Yeah, so it kind of looks very Ansel Adams now, almost like a light leak type of Leica type of shot. So that's what that does for us. Let's cancel out of that. Of course, you can do a sharpen as well, which we're going to skip in this case. And the reason for that is I've gone and deliberately found an image with a little bit of noise. So I'm at 150% here. Ordinarily, you wouldn't be zooming in this much. But just to kind of extrapolate the noise so that you can see this clearly, what we're going to go ahead and do, you guys, is we're going to try and remove that noise using this one-step noise removal. And I'm going to allow it to chunk through. Now I'm done. We're just waiting for the webinar engine to catch up with us. So it's taken us a couple of seconds for this to take place, right? And there you can see it's kind of gotten rid of the noise, right? So let's say that you feel that the noise removal was a little too heavy. The automatic engine was a little too strong. What we can go ahead and do is we can go ahead and fade the correction. So we can kind of pull that back if you want. So this fade option is really, really powerful. Again, we've got a whole stack of tools that, you know, are right at your fingertips from a photography perspective. And then, of course, you can go ahead and choose to edit that further using the full production suite of tools that are available to us. Of course, these kind of controls I generally prefer driving through the complete workspace, but you have access to them here. Finally, in terms of the photographic workspace, we have these instant effects down on the right-hand side, which are really, really cool. What one can do here is quickly just go ahead and pick up a particular type of effect that you may like. So let me go ahead and zoom out so we're looking at the entire image again. I'll just wait for that to happen on your screens, and then I'll go ahead and explain to you how the instant effects come together. Now, you're probably familiar with the instant effects if you are using PaintShop Pro for a little bit, that these are available to you in PaintShop Pro proper. Here, what they've done is they've just brought them up front and center so that you have no interface clutter. You can just get on with the job, right? Okay. Yeah, Angela, it's really, really cool. Thank you for that comment. It is really, I'm glad you're going to be having fun with it. And, you know, please share your thoughts as you guys are working through with it. If you haven't got 2020 yet, you can go ahead and download a trial and, you know, kind of give that a whirl, because that's going to be a load of fun too, right? So great comment. I'm having a lot of fun with it, and I'm quite sure you are too, Angela. So definitely check that out. And thanks for the comment, because, you know, these tends to be webinars tend to be a droning monotone, don't they? So your participation is really valuable. Okay, so again, what we have is we have things like, so yes, contrast more, for example, on the top right-hand side of the screen, you'd be able to see the preview. If I were to want to apply it, I just double click it. I've left this open. I find it, you know, by the third time you do this, you're going to get a little annoyed by this, but I just want to share with you that you've got instant learning right here. So it will tell you what to do, how to apply it, etc., etc. But it's straightforward, of course. So generally, I would choose this don't show this window again, but for purposes of demonstration, I just leave it on. Okay. So I'm gonna hit the close button on that, and you can see you've got this really cool high contrast look that's going to be coming through on your screen in a minute. Awesomeness. Now let's assume I'd like that. Plus, I'd like to maybe do. Let's go infrared film, which is going to kind of black and white it, right? So you can see you've got different options here. You've got portraits, landscapes, retros, whatever you might like to apply to it. So let's go ahead and sepia retro this again. Let's do a soft sepia retro. Let's see what that looks like. I like it. So this is introducing a bit of a blur as well. I'll go ahead and I'm going to disable the window now because we don't need it anymore. And you've got this kind of really cool kind of light leak bokeh vibe going. Again, I'm just going to give the computer a minute so that the webinar kind of shows it to you on your screen. And I'm sure you guys are going to have a ton of fun with this tool set as well. Okay, so we're fast approaching the hour. I'm going to go ahead and jump out of that for a minute. And I'm going to head back to my complete workspace once again. Okay, so with that done, what I'm then going to do is head over to manage so I can just kind of talk you through the next tool set. This one here is something that I have been wanting for a really, really long time in PaintShop Pro, and now it is available to us. We're going to take a fairly challenging selection, in this case, this llama image, and we'd like to drop it against this rather drastic sunset again. So I'm going to go ahead and hit edit photo once more. And I've done it to both, so both those images will pop open. And once they open on your side, I will then go ahead and have a conversation about them. So I'm just waiting for them to catch up, at least the webinar engine, to just kind of express that on your end. I'm going to say no to that last image. Okay. So we should be left with the llama and the background that we're wanting to place it on in this case. Okay, so there's our llama. You can see we've got a fairly challenging selection here. You know, it's these soft hairs coming off her. And we would like to place her into this rather cool looking sunset. And now I've gone and deliberately chosen a challenging background with a challenging image. So the first thing I'm going to go ahead and do here, you guys, is I'm going to go ahead and choose from my selection tools. I just want to show you which one I'm going to work with. I'm going to work with a smart selection brush, and I'm sure a number of us are familiar with this. We're going to change the mode to add, and once that is done, I'm just going to go ahead and make a selection. So you can see there's the selection edge. It's popped all the way quite nicely to the edge there, through to our eye, up to our nose. Let's go ahead and continue to make selections. Let's run all the way up to our ears, up to there. So that's looking pretty strong in terms of selection. Maybe I should include some of these hairs over here. Now, a good methodology that I use in PaintShop Pro to check against whether my selection is good or not is this edit selection option here, which just kind of shows me the mask. And you might say, well, that's a really bad selection, and I would be inclined to agree with you. I'm going to go ahead and choose erase over here. And what I'd like to do is just go ahead and add a little bit more selection edge to that. Let's go to selections and choose edit selection again. And in fact, let's do it this way. I'll go ahead and add just the outer edge of a fur alongside the eye. So let me undo that twice because I was on the wrong tool. My apologies. Okay, that's better. Okay, so let's go ahead now and look at the new refine brush tool. Okay, so if you have a look at the top, you'll see that there's this little button called refine brush. What this does is it brings up this really cool functionality, and what we're currently looking at is we're looking at an overlay. Okay, and this is going to allow us to create a really cool edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change. There's a whole host of options here. In fact, let me change this down to 0 so it remembers the last thing you did, of course. And I'll set the feather to 0 as well. So that's the edge, looking pretty darn nasty at this point in time. One nasty. Let's go for a -10 on the expand border, and that's going to just basically cut into the image a little bit. Maybe a little more. Let's try 20. Sorry, I didn't mean to hit OK there. So let me just do that again. My apologies for that. So we said 20, right? I hit the return key in error. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go over to overlay here, and I'm going to choose black and white. So these are different viewing options that you have. And you've got a whole host of different brush modes. We've got refine edge, we've got feathers, and we can add or subtract from our selection. So I'm going to go ahead and choose my refine edge tool over here, and my brush size of 130-ish is just perfect. I'm going to recommend you do this in small hits, and you can see how beautifully that's kind of brought through the edge for us, right? This is really, really cool. So I'm going to go ahead and continue just to show you what this edge looks like. And you can see we're bringing back hairs, these fine hairs along the edge of our llama lady. And we're just going to go ahead on the edge. And you can see there are components where it's not coming through altogether, okay, because it's picking up contrast from inside the image. But we're going to go ahead and fix that momentarily. So that's really quick and easy. Now you'll notice that we've got bits and bobs inside her that we don't want to be part of the selection. So I'm going to go ahead and choose the add option here. And what this is going to allow me to do is allow me to take away, as you will see over there, it's going to allow me to take away bits that I don't want. Now, if you happen to be working with a mouse, my recommendation would be just click and let go of the mouse as you're working through, okay? And you'll see what it does is it doesn't just simply erase, it erases intelligently. It goes and recalculates the information to say, oh, okay, that's the edge. That's what I need to protect. Really, really funky. So I'm just going to wait for the software to catch up there. Of course, when you do run a webinar, the software tends to run a little slower than you would normally want it to. Okay, so I'm just working along the left ear now. Okay, so, and I just want to clean up that little bit, and that's looking pretty darn good. So, there we go. Let's try and get into that right left ear a little bit better. Okay, so let's say I'm happy with that. Apologies there, that's not what I wanted. I actually needed to be on the refine brush. I just want to refine this edge a little better, see if we can get a better sensibility of it. That's okay. And then we'll just go ahead and clean up this edge here at the bottom. And that's pretty okay in terms of the edge, okay? Let me just run a refine on that. This time what I'll do is I'll take the brush size down so it doesn't affect the inside edge too much. Let's see what we end up with. Brilliant. Okay, so if we look at this in the context of our overlay, that's what we get. That's looking pretty darn decent, right? What I would normally do is I would work with, you've got a whole stack of different options off the bottom. You can choose selection, mask, new layer. I like new mask layer because that gives me a whole host of other possibilities. So I'll go ahead and hit the apply button. And you can see that that's done a fairly good job. Now, what we'll want to do is I want to take this image over to its background where it's going to be seated rightly. Let me pick up the selection tool over here. I'll pick up the layer, drag it over to the background, go ahead and drop that in place. That's obviously too large. So what I'll go ahead and do is just scale this down in terms of size. Let's zoom out a little bit so we can grab the outer corner handles. And I'll pick up this corner handle and shunt it that way. Pick up that corner handle and shunt it up just so that the base of our neck touches the edge of our image. That's looking pretty compelling. Okay, so you can see we've got these edges that are looking pretty decent. But as you would expect, you've got some anti-aliasing that has come through from the original image, and we'd like to address that. Now you've got your selection already. Now, the reason the mask becomes really powerful now is we can go ahead and tweak the edge post the selection without damaging the hairs too much. And how is that going to be possible? So how we're going to do that, you guys, is with a mask selected, we're going to head over to adjust. From the adjust subcomponent, we are going to choose brightness and contrast, and I'm going to go for a levels. And with the levels option selected, you'll see you've got a whole host of nodes at the bottom. In fact, let me wait for the projection to catch up with us. There we go. So if you look at the bottom, then you'll see that these three nodes, this represents, of course, as you would have guessed, shadow details. Midtones is the little gray diamond or rhomboid shape, and on the far right, we've got highlights. I'm going to go ahead and pick up this middle knob or switch, which is our midtones, and I'm going to exaggerate the clip here. You can see what it does is it feathers, so I can get more of a softer hairline edge, or I can cut into the image. And that's basically how we control these, right? So 128 is around about halfway. I'm just going to basically cut into the selection a little bit. So without even having to reselect this, we can go ahead and do those types of effects. So at this point in time, what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and collapse this group. I'm choosing a right click and going over to merge, and we're going to merge this group, and we're going to then just go ahead and position her better. So that's around about there. I do want this entire image to fit better, and to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over again to curves. And in fact, yeah, let's do a curve. In fact, I'll go ahead and choose curves over here. And I'm going to go ahead and drop down an S curve once again. So we're exaggerating. And I, in fact, want to focus my attention on her. And I'll just give you a quick sense of the preview on the image itself. There we go. See, that's sitting way better. She's sitting inside of the image and she looks good. Okay, so I'm sure you're going to have a ton of fun with that particular tool. All right, so we're almost on the hour. I'm going to, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them into the chat box. Yes, you're quite right, Angela. You know, this is going to make a massive difference. So Angela's point is the refined brush is going to make a huge amount of difference. Can you imagine like really soft hairs and, you know, delicate curtains and those types of things? It's going to save us a ton of time. Thank you very much for that comment, Angela. Okay, so that brings us spot on to the very last thing I'd like to share with you in PaintShop Pro 2024 today. And that is, of course, the one-click fix when working with a crop tool. So this is something that they introduced, this is Corel that they introduced in 2019. And when one works with a crop tool, what one gets is you get this whole tranche of additional tools that are available to us. Let me go ahead and switch this off for a minute. What do these tools actually do? Well, of course, we've got the crop tool. I'm going to go ahead and I love the rule of thirds crop. So basically what I'm doing is I'm kind of positioning that foot and the abdomen, her abdomen, more or less in terms of the power zones. And what we're able to do, of course, is we're able to choose different types of straightening, cropping, and all of those types of things, which I'm quite sure you're familiar with. The one thing that is really cool is, of course, I can do a one-step photo fix. So I'm just going to toggle it on and off. And the one-step photo fix is giving me a high level of contrast. So I'm going to keep that. This is a fairly decent image. What I'd like to do is I'd like to put focus on her face. So we would like to do a depth of field option or a depth of field blur. And I'm going to go ahead and click on that, very much as though we've gone and opened up the aperture quite drastically. Now, it's gone and picked up a default spot based on what I did last. And if you click and hold on this, you'll see that you're able to change the position of the depth of field. So I can go ahead, for example, and say, I want to focus my depth of field there, or I would like to maybe focus more on the abdomen. In this case, of course, I want to focus more on her face. So that's looking pretty darn nice. And of course, what I can then do is I'm going to go ahead and the size or crank down the size rather of my lens. So, you know, we get a high level of blur in the areas that surrounding her. Okay. So that's basically us done. I'd like to share with you one other thing in terms of PaintShop Pro that I would strongly recommend you go ahead and do, and that is the Get More. So for example, what was released in the previous version is the pick to painting function. And of course, up top, you have all of the stuff that you have to pay for. I'm inclined to just share with you the stuff that you're going to get built in to Corel PaintShop Pro straight off the bat. You can see I already installed the pick to painting, but there's a ton of different tool sets that you can download and install on your computer for free at no additional cost. So with that said, that has brought us to the end of this webinar. I'd like to, and we're hitting the hour on the nose, I'd like to thank you very much for joining us. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take them in the chat pod. Comments, questions are most welcome. So I'll just hang around for like 10 more seconds and see if there are any questions coming through. If not, I'd like to say thank you very, very much for your time. Thank you for joining us for this recording and presentation. As I said to you earlier, the recording will be made available in the next couple of days once the events team has kind of just spliced it and put it together very nicely for us. For those of us that have had a couple of technical issues up front, I'd like to say thank you for bearing with us. Don in particular, Divaka, thank you very much for your kind comment. And do take care. We will be hosting the next session on working with motion graphics using Pinnacle Studio 2023, which is coming up in 2 weeks' time. So I look forward to seeing some of you on that webinar. Thank you very much, and do have a lovely day.